March 14th, 2025. This is my review of reading Deuteronomy chapter 6, 7, 8, and 9. What I got out of this, what stood right out to me as I was reading along: be careful to obey God, then all will go well with you. And I think he's talking about the statutes and things, but still, be careful to obey God, and then all will go well with you. It's our disobeying God that causes us for things not to go well with us. His instructions and that he's telling us guide us and direct us because he is the authority on our lives and knows what's good for us. That's why he tells us to do what he tells us to do. That's why I'm not going to tell you. Just read it and know. You have to know. Um, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. Commit yourself wholeheartedly to his commands. Um, write it on your doorpost, he says. Put it on your forehead, even. So make sure you understand it. Take your time. Take the time to make sure it's written on your heart and that you understand it. Commit yourself wholeheartedly. And then he goes on, holiness is special, but it isn't because you're anything special. Holiness is special. Godliness is special. But God didn't choose you to allow you to become that way because you're something special, because you're so much more obedient than the next person at all. It's not what that stems from at all. He just picks us. He just allows that if we hear it. I think he calls all of us, really. I'm not a Calvinist that says only the chosen ones, but I think he one for one knows what who's and whose, and he calls it out as such. But it's our point, our purpose in that is to choose it and follow it. So that's important to understand. It's not because we're anything special, not at all in any way, shape, or form. It's His holiness. It's His goodness. It's His right to pick and choose. Or again, I think it has more to do with our own. Well, we are given free will. This points thinking like this makes me think of the old Calvinistic, and we're just chosen. And he did choose Israelites to be his special people, but he also knew who'd rebel out of that, what would happen with that, and he doesn't mean there's anything different than that. But listen for God. Don't judge other people where they're at with God as long as they're following and seeking Him. Just the way it is. And keep in mind, here you go, God took 40 years to test and prove the good character of the people of the Israelites. He did the same thing with Abraham. It took 100 years before he delivered the promise of Abraham. Moses, he was wandering himself in the desert prior to um, prior to him leading them out of Egypt. He was an old man when that happened. He had to go through some things in order for these things to take for him to come into that authority. And God does that. Sometimes he'll take a David and bring him up and out, but that caused other problems too. David was no perfect person there. We know that. God disciplines us for our own good. Just as a parent disciplines their child, he'll lead us and direct us and guide us, and sometimes he uses discipline and hard to whack us into place. If we have to do that, it's a problem. It's much better if we do it on our own. We figure it out, what we're supposed to be doing, and do that, and we'll have a blessed life from it. But if we're not, he'll correct us. Hmm. Be careful that he's warning them that they're going to be blessed beyond measure and that they'll have a lot of things in the new land and it'll grow. And if they're, especially if they're following in God's footsteps, God's going to bless that. It's going to come with blessings to be obedient to the Lord. But he says, don't let that ruin you. Don't let yourself become prideful in it. Take care of it. Stay humble. Know that you need God in all things. And then we get into Moses coming, the golden calf. And he's up on the mountain, and he comes down the mountain. When he was up on the mountain receiving the 10 Commandments, he was not eating. That was 40 days and 40 nights that he was on the mountain. Jesus also 40 days and 40 nights. But it's interesting. I never noticed this before, but he came down from the mountain, smashed the stone tablets, and went down on his face for 40. It says 40 days and 40 nights. He prayed for them. He ate no food, drank no water. So is that 80 days? No food, no water? I don't know. I'm not saying one way or the other, but it looks like it to me. But the one thing I do know, he was in the presence of God. So it wasn't that he did that on his own, but when he was in the presence of God, God was his food, his life sustenance. We eat food and we drink water to sustain life. But when you're in the presence of the life giver, do we need to eat? No. I'm surprised. I'm a little bit confused, surprised, whatever, not unsure of how to take him saying, then as before, I threw myself down before the Lord for 40 days and nights, ate no bread and drank no water because of the great sin that you had committed by doing what the Lord hated and provoking him to anger. And he feared righteously. He feared the anger of the Lord. That was Moses. And then said God was furious with Aaron, but he prayed for Aaron. The Lord spared him. Just Moses prayed for the people. He threw himself down for the people. Reminds me a little of Jesus. This is a foretelling of what Jesus is going to do. He's going to throw himself down for us. He's going to pray for us. And the Lord will spare us if we ask for that. Kind of neat, that foreshadowing anyway. The Israelites died because the Lord wasn't always, and then he gives all these reasons, excuses, and I know there's something in that, but it's not speaking to me like the other things are. So anyway, that's my assessment as of today, right now. Good night.